Because if this is basically the scalar technology, the reason why they call it interferometry, scalar interferometry, is that you have two beams that have to interfere with each other to make the image. And so you have two different beams, and you have to tune them to get them to line up with each other. And you can actually see in the pictures of the spiral the double image of it that makes it clear that the same spiral is actually coming from two different projectors, and it's the combination of them together that's making the image. Anyway, I feel like I'm talking way too much, but I'm just really excited about this, so you'll have to excuse me.
It's great. Be my guest. That's why I had you on.
Be your guest. Yes, I am.
Also because you would make sense, but, you know, it wasn't just because you can talk. But I have to say that it's very interesting. To me, it actually looks like a vortex opening, and I also thought perhaps it was coming from the other direction. In other words, it was coming from the sky to the ground, which would possibly relate to even what's going on in CERN, because you don't really know, just because a vortex opens up in a certain area, what it's stimulated by. It is true there's a beam going down to the ground. I guess.
Oh, you raise a really cool point. I mean, Richard Hoagland.
Ground up, but I actually.
Right, Richard Hoagland has proven that the end location of the beam is HAARP. We know that. That's now a fact. What we don't know is, did HAARP make the beam from the ground up into space, or is the beam going from space down to HAARP? And if so, for what reason? Hello? I think I got knocked off the air. Hello?
You're on the air. David, go ahead and keep talking.
Oh, great. Okay.
Carrie's the one that fell out the window.
Okay. Sorry, everybody out there. I didn't realize that I was still on the air. I'm just trying to keep the show going. So anyway, let's talk about that for a minute, the idea that this could be from space and that it's actually beaming down to HAARP. And the point that I want to make on that front is that we've seen other examples before of UFOs appearing over such things as nuclear missile installations and even in the air riding alongside missiles as they're being tested. And in the midst of all these things happening, the UFO actually depowers the entire facility or the missile. The fissile radioactive material is now no longer radioactive. It becomes an inert shell that has no weapon potential. So could this also be something that was perhaps offsetting HAARP-based electromagnetic mind control? Could it be that the facility there was potentially going to try to disrupt Obama's speech, and this was some kind of extraterrestrial intervention to basically knock out the power? Now, that's where more research is required. We would have to find out, for example, if there were any reports of this facility, which again is called EISCAT, E-I-S-C-A-T. We'd have to find out whether they had any power anomalies, which of course would be very difficult to find because they probably would keep it secret. But again, we do know that the exact location of this thing in the sky shows that the end of the beam lands directly on this HAARP facility, which is very, very peculiar. So from that initial point, the question then becomes, this is obviously related to disclosure. We've had very high-level sources telling us something is going on. They're getting ready to make an announcement. We heard this from Pete Peterson. I've heard it from other whistleblowers as well. Some people have criticized me and said Dan Burrish is the only whistleblower we have. This has not come from Burrish. This is other sources, and there's several of them. But there are certain key sources we've spoken to. I saw Dr. Stephen Greer speak recently at the Secrets Conference in Phoenix, Arizona, which I spoke at the weekend before last weekend. And he gave some very interesting information as well that I wanted to share, and that is that he's been working with a scientist who has access to the knowledge to be able to build very practical, high-energy yield, free energy devices. He can actually even build, apparently, a gravity shielding technology, a little thing that you can fly around with radio control, and literally is a gravity shielding UFO, little portable UFO device. He has this knowledge. Now, everything had been going well with Greer, and they were getting the financing together to basically release the technology out to the world to help save the planet. And then, of course, since there are multiple levels of the cover-up and they don't all agree with each other, in fact, there's a lot of factions and a lot of infighting, one of the factions went after this guy and basically ostracized him and got him out of the country to some secure location, quote-unquote, which probably means an underground facility, overseas in Europe. And he was basically being held prisoner there. There was no forward movement. Now, as of 2 weeks ago, when we met Dr. Greer and I did get a chance to speak to him, we actually have now gotten confirmation. The powers that be have set this man free. They're willing to allow him to resume his work with Greer, and it is going to be moving forward. They're going to allow his technology to be brought out into the public. Actually, this past weekend, I met with Steve Bassett at a person's house here locally at L.A. There was a private party that was happening. I ended up giving a talk on 2012 and the various subjects that I'm so familiar with that most of you guys out there know about. And we also were discussing this whole business of disclosure, because Bassett, if you don't already know the name, has been out there since 1998. He was on Art Bell. He's actually been on Coast to Coast, I think 27 times, they said, talking about the idea that there's this war for disclosure. Now, back in 1998, Clinton was still president, and there is a website that you can find. I don't remember the link to it right now, but it's talking about Hillary Clinton and her involvement with UFOs, and it's a fascinating website because it clearly shows, with Podesta at the head of it, there was a whole initiative within the Clinton administration to try to get disclosure out into the open. But Clinton himself did not have the clearance or the access to be able to get the information. And there was a very interesting jab that he made against the military-industrial complex in a particular video you can find on this Hillary Clinton presidential UFO website, in which he basically says something like, if there was something other than dummies that crashed in Roswell, I'd like to know because I don't have access to the information. So it was a blatant confrontational challenge that he made to the military-industrial complex right on television in that speech. And this is around the time that Bassett first got involved, and he, of course, had contact with Podesta. He's now been on television a bunch of times. You can see him on Larry King, a couple other specials. He's been on several networks. So we met, and we had private discussion last weekend. So this is very fresh, very new. And without getting into detail, because I know that he probably wouldn't want me to, the gist of what he was saying is that there are a variety of countries now, not just one or two, who are really pushing for disclosure. They want this to happen. He's personally aware of these folks. He's been in contact with them. Obviously, as a major media figure, they have come to him and spoken to him. He's also organized these X conferences every year in which whistleblowers are coming forward, similar to what Dr. Greer did in 2001 with Disclosure Project. And that whole purpose is to bring people together, to have them focus their energies into the direction of, here's the guys, here's the proof, here's the evidence. And recently I linked to all this stuff on my website. There was a show that came out on History Channel, I believe, describing this conference, actually taking footage from it and then interviewing people who had spoken there separately and privately. So as a result of all this stuff coming together, we have basically everybody who's on the leading edge of disclosure movement now saying that the green light has been given. There's some other very enigmatic stuff that I think I'll wait until we can get Carrie back on the air, which may be after the break.
Actually, I am.
Oh, you're there?
Here.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So I'm just monologuing away here thinking you're lost in cyberspace. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But it was very interesting. I never get knocked off. I talk on Skype all day and all night. But of course, for my flagship Project Camelot radio show, they had to knock me off just to let me know they're still out there. But at any rate,